My guest today and I go all the way back to childhood. Yes, we grew up together, went to school together, graduated high school, and attended the same college together. But it just didn't stop there. Later on in his life, this person became a teacher. And I, too, am a former educator, and therefore it just warmed my heart to know that this is what he wanted to do. But Dr. Sean Miller is more than just a teacher. He is a change agent. He is a trailblazer and so much more. And he's done something absolutely incredible that is changing the face of our nation when it comes to his passion and commitment for students. You'll hear about that and more on this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. I am your host, Alethea Felton, and I'm so excited to have each and every one of you listening today. I'm glad that you've joined me. And if you're new to this podcast, welcome, welcome, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and follow, give it a 5-star rating and review. And for those of you who have been with me since the beginning, I am so grateful to have you. Y'all, a lot of great things are happening here on the Power Transformation Podcast, as well as in my own life. I just did a keynote speech recently on this past Sunday. This episode is being released in June, of course, June 5th. But on Sunday, June 2nd, I had the opportunity to do a keynote speech at the Congressional Country Club in Bethesda, Maryland, where I spoke to gastroenterology fellows who were graduating from MedStar Georgetown University Hospital. Y'all, this was definitely so surreal to me and such an honor because of the fact, as you all know, I live with Crohn's disease, and to be invited to speak by my own gastroenterologist, Dr. Mark Matar, on my journey and resilience and hope, and to speak in front of physicians, a room full of doctors and other medical professionals. It was quite amazing. And I share this because I want all of you out there to know that you too have some type of incredible skill or gift or talent that you can share with the world, and that don't let obstacles or your challenges be that defining factor to not do things in your life. Let it be that factor where you can beat the odds and do incredible, remarkable things. And I share that because this is what our guest, Dr. Sean Miller, is all about. He went against the status quo to really do something life-changing, remarkable, innovative, and transformative for not only his students, but for other educators, teachers, just people in general by what he's doing. And that is what this episode is all about. An incredible man who is really changing the course of history as we know it. So we're going to jump right into his interview. But what I'd like to always do first is begin with an affirmation. I'm going to say the affirmation once, and then you repeat it. I am boldly and courageously changing the world for the better, one day at a time. I am so thrilled today to have this gentleman here with us. I have known him for many years. I can't even count how long it's been. I know that, as I said earlier, we went to high school together. We went to undergrad together. We even went to the same grad school. I don't think we went at the exact same time at Regent. But the fact is, I've known him for many, many years, and he has always been just a really wonderful person. And I am so honored to have him up here. It is none other than Sean Miller, Dr. Sean Miller, excuse me, Doctor. He has
Not
earned
yet.
that. Yes, you have earned that. Excuse me, Dr. Sean Miller. Sean, welcome to the Power Transformation Podcast.
Hey, what's up? How you doing, family?
I'm doing great, and I'm doing even better now that I have you up here. Y'all, this is a remarkable man, and this is going to be a wonderful interview. He's a husband, a father, and so much more. And he's a teacher, and that is just a huge thing. You all know how I feel about educators. I was one for 20 years in the trenches in a lot of different roles. And to see Sean where he is now, and what he is doing to really change the game of public school education across the country. And I mean that. But before we dive into that, I always like to ask a random icebreaker question just to have fun so that we can get to know you better. And so, Sean, this is it. It's a bit creative. Think outside of the box. But this is the question. Sean, if you had the opportunity to travel to any other planet, real or fictional, where do you think you would go and why?
Oh man, that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. So a fictional or real planet I could travel to if I had a choice. I'm gonna call it the planet getting rich and quitting. That's a, that's a planet where I don't have to work. I can kick it. It's kind of like a contemporary Garden of Eden. You know what I'm saying? I'm just
Yeah.
kinda relaxing. Everything that I need has already been taken care of. I have all the provision I need. I got my feet kicked up. I don't have no hair, but if I had hair, that joint would be blowing in the wind. You know what I'm saying? And just
Yeah.
relaxing. I think it's the natural state of humanity. That there's work, but there's also freedom and liberty and peace that comes with that. So I tell my students all the time, and they know this verbatim, that my retirement plan is to get rich and quit. And they tell me that sometimes. So if I had a planet where that is my 100% existence, hey, I'm in a good spot.
Yes. And it's almost like a utopia of sense, also.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. I like that. And I like that answer. It was really outside the box. So, y'all, if Sean is already off the gate, starting off answering questions like that, can you imagine if you were a student in his class, how just amazing that would be? But anyway, we are going to talk all about that. But, Sean, the next question is pretty standard, but you answer it any way that you want. Who is Dr. Sean Miller?
I would just start out by saying myself, I think I'm a unique cat, for lack of a better descriptor. Um, I'm a creator, uh, lifetime artist, a little less now as I get older, but always been an artist, fond in performance arts. Um, have a passion, as you mentioned before, in education. That is
Mhm.
a newer passion over the last decade. That's not something I've always been into, but I'm into impacting lives. I think I'm a motivator, somebody that just tries to get people to see that there's something bigger and better than them. And sometimes that takes a little bit of maneuvering and a little bit of coaching. But yeah, definitely, as you mentioned before, husband, dad, reverend, you know, writer, a lot of things.
Mhm.
It's myself. I think being true to myself. And I was having this conversation even before I hopped on the podcast. It's just I've always thought about who I am and what I
Mhm.
want to be and how that evolves, and then kind of reverse engineering my decisions to make sure that I stay true to who I am, but also get some degree of success while doing it. So I never, I want to look in the mirror and be like, yo, Sean, you're not you. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to compromise that, but I'm myself. And I think, and this is not bragging, but, I consider myself, and others have as well, as a Renaissance man. I do a lot of things. And
Mhm.
thank God, I think I'm doing relatively well. But yeah, just I like to get it in. I like to stay busy, but I like to do things that are passionate to me.
And I will just say straight up, and I mean this, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but listeners, audience, I can say honestly is that Sean's character has always been intact. There is no one example that I can think of where, even growing up, where people said something bad about Sean. He was just always, Sean always stayed in his lane, made sure that, and what I mean by that, Sean didn't start no drama. He didn't try to get, into stuff. He was just a genuine person. And that was always consistent from what I saw and experienced. And we had a few classes here and there in high school, but Sean wasn't about the nonsense, and his character has always been impeccable. And even when we went to college, and many years ago now. Gosh, over
Okay.
20 over 20 years ago.
20.
Woo. But anyway, even in college, to really see Sean come into his own in college, and he was a huge man on campus in college, yet still had a sense of wanting to help out any and everybody. It wasn't pride, arrogance. He was never cocky. And I can honestly say that, just a stand-up person. So for anybody listening who has met Sean since then, I'm telling you, as a person who has known him since childhood, he has always been solid. And I think that's what our youth nowadays need. And you went from literally starting off your career in the corporate world and transitioning into education. And I remember when you were contemplating that, I think you had done a post about it, and I was like, hey, I'm all for it. But Sean, what inspired your transition from the corporate world to teaching, and how did you make that change?
Yeah, it was an interesting story for me. It was not a traditional route. To be honest, being an educator was the last thing I wanted to do. Like,
Mm.
I had a short list of things I would never be. Teacher was like top one. Because in college,
I was the same way, straight
yeah,
up.
like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to deal with no bad kids. So I'm good. You know what I'm saying? But no, it happened like this. So I was in corporate America. I was at a financial institution, a director of marketing. So I had my own department that I was responsible for. I wanted to live the American dream. I wanted a corner office. I had the corner office. I had a window, and it ended up being, and I won't call it chance or coincidence, but we used to have to establish student-run credit union branches in DC public schools.
Mm.
So I would go out to some of the schools, and after a while of going, I would just see the young people, how they maneuver, how they interacted. And I was like, yo, I think I could really have some impact here. I think this is something that um, I could do. That's kind of how I phrased it in my mind. I could do this. But at the same time, just the pressures of, I got to put money in my pocket. And I wanted the American dream, and I'm getting closer to it. I still kind of put it on the back burner. But what happened was I had a colleague that went on a lot of these ventures with me. And she said, hey, Sean, you're going to be a teacher one day. Because she could
Mm.
see the spark even before I saw it. And for me, it was kind of fleeting. But for her, I think it was like tangible. So she told me that back at the office. And at first I was like, nah, that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Then eventually, I think the environment that I was in corporate USA,
Hmm.
I'll say this, I feel like it was killing me slowly.
Ooh.
And, and I would wake up, sweats in the middle of the night, like just thinking about my job and how
Hmm.
I hated it. But I felt like it was a necessary evil. But I ended up just kind of giving up to the call. I said, yeah, I'm gonna be a teacher one day. And then I had a fateful day when I walked away from corporate America with no backup plan other than being a teacher. I didn't even know how to be a teacher. I was just like, I'm gonna do this all
Hmm.
because I want to impact young people. And that's the reason why I've been able to sustain it, because that's the main thing. Is like, there's things that come with education. But ultimately, if I could walk in a classroom or in a building and inspire or motivate somebody beyond just what I'm teaching, then to me, that's a good day. So, and that's kind of what's kept me around.
And so when you decided to make this transition, because anybody who chooses to leave one field and go into teaching, I think personally that that is really something that they've been led and called to do because it's just not a decision that is made lightly. Now, I did the opposite. I started straight out of college, but it is common for people to be career switchers. That is not uncommon. But how did you decide what exactly you wanted to teach and what led you to that content area?
Yeah, fresh off the bat, art.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
Yeah.
when I become a teacher, I'm going to be an art teacher. So I've been doing art uh, as a main passion since second grade. I knew in elementary school I was going to be an artist,
Mhm.
specifically a comic book artist. That was my career goal in elementary school. So by the time I transitioned to education, I was like, hey, I got to be an art teacher. Let me figure out how to do that. And I got my teaching license in art. Um, and 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 then I started thinking, okay, what's the program if they start cutting first in schools? Art.
The arts. Uh-huh.
I
That's
like
true.
I like to stay gainfully employed. So I ended
Yeah.
up saying, okay, let me figure out some core content areas to pursue. So I ended up getting a license in special education after that. Then I got a license in social studies. Then I got a license in English.
You were just getting everything.
Look, I'm like, I need a job, so I gotta eat. So
Yeah.
therefore, and specifically English and social studies, because even in high school, even far back as middle school, the humanities is where I thrived. I was never great at science. I was horrible at math pretty much
Mm.
most of my life, even back in elementary school. But something about the ability to write, especially creative writing, was my wheelhouse, and the ability to do fine arts. Those are things I wanted to do, but in terms of core areas, humanities and social studies kind of are in the same bag for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a natural historian, but I do value history.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I kind of had to develop my own methodology over the years. But those two areas, I just relatively good at them in school.
Yeah.
I was like, they're interesting topics and interesting things that I can teach young people about. So that led me there. So I'm actually haven't looked back on being an art teacher. I got swooped up into history, and then here I am. Like I haven't looked back.
Exactly. And you've been an educator for 10 years now, right? 10 or 11 years?
10 now.
10 now? Yeah. Wow. That
And time
decade went
flies.
by.
Yeah, because really, I remember. So I was in corporate America for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I got an education, I was like, I wonder what it's going to feel like when I reach 8 years in education, and I hit eight.
You passed it.
And nine, and I'm in 10th. That I was like,
Yeah.
so I don't even consider, because it was like this tension I had for a while. It was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still partly corporate. But once I surpassed that 8 year mark, I was like, yeah, I'm an educator for real now.
Yeah, and I use the term educator not to take away from you as a teacher, but I use that term especially for people who do far more than just in the classroom. And again, I'm not taking away from what teachers do because that is a really challenging job. And I was in the classroom for many years, but educator also, Sean, because not only have you got your master's, doctorate, but recently you also have decided to get more licensure. And could you share with us that road that you just recently obtained?
Yeah. I guess this means I'm a glutton for punishment. But yeah, I just got my licensure for being an administrator. So
Yes,
Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia.
that's
So
right.
Virginia one just hit last week. So
Triple threat. That's right.
I gotta eat. I need a job, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
yeah,
you will
yeah,
get one. Yes, yes.
appreciate that.
And two, I think it's important to note and there's already a teacher shortage, but I also know that you being a Black man teacher, a Black male teacher, what are some of those unique challenges or experiences that you faced in the education system, and how have you learned to kind of navigate those?
Yeah, I always put it like this. when you're well, we're unicorns first and foremost.
Mm,
They make up 1.7% of the American teaching force, so it's very difficult to find us anywhere.
mm-hmm.
And generally, when a black man vacates a teacher position, like you mentioned in the shortage, you're going to be very hard pressed to replace them with another black man. So it's very difficult. One of the challenges I've noticed, particularly early in my career, everybody thinks we're Joe Clark.
Oh, and for some context, y'all, Joe Clark, lean on me. If you don't know that, Google it, but I get it. Wow, I never considered that.
Yeah, so when it comes down to like particularly disciplining students of color,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's almost as if we're viewed as the disciplinarian, the father figure, the club bouncer, the club security. Like we're that for a lot of teachers, and especially for those that just haven't interacted with a lot of black men. There is a preconception that comes with that. We're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're relatively tall like me, they're like, okay, well, it's the big black guy. This is kind of how it plays out. The big black
Mm-hmm.
guy. Something's happening. Let's go get the big black man. And
Yeah.
so early in my career, and I hadn't considered that, but then I realized like every time something was happening, like people were running to me. Wait, this got nothing to do with me. This is not my students. This not. I'm not. That's not my class. I'm like, man,
Uh-huh.
they running across the hallway, coming to get me. So that's a challenge. Is the perception of men and black men specifically. It's a microcosm of what we see in society, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's viewed as a threat, and sometimes it's seen as a commodity to be used. And then just learning how to teach in a way that's engaging. I think that's one of the biggest challenging. One thing that I will say um, benefited me from being in marketing early in my career is that it allowed me to see education not necessarily as a product, but you do have to convince students why they should want to learn or
Mm,
convince them why they should invest their time and their attention to what you have to say.
mm-hmm.
So I've kind of used that leverage to say, okay, yeah, I got to give you a real life reason why you should even pay attention to my class. I got to
Mm-hmm.
give real life reason why you should even respect me. Because I'm going to be honest, and Alethea, you probably didn't notice in school, but quite frankly, I didn't really respect most of the teachers.
Mm.
I honestly probably only remember about 4 or 5 of my teachers,
I got you.
K-12.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that was an internal thing. And I was like, so I know that I have to sell education. I have to sell
Mm.
respect. I have to sell these things for a young mind for them to say, yo, yeah, this is worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
My future's on the line. This is why I have to maintain positive relationships. This is why I gotta have some kind of work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gotta be about them. So I have to convince them to find their own why as opposed to me telling them 100% what my why is. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
use that for leverage, but I'm selling a product. I'm marketing a product. That
Mm-hmm.
teachers have to do that in some way, shape, or form because you got to convince them. I don't believe that when someone walks in my classroom, they're going to respect me just because I'm an
That's
authority.
right. Yeah.
I don't gel with that. So I got to get them captivated in the moment, and I got to put on a show if I have to. I have to get
Mm-hmm.
all the bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors, whatever
That's
I can
right.
to get them engaged to say, okay, yeah, okay, now let's talk government. Let's talk African American history. Let's talk English. Now I got them. So I got to hook them first, and I got to maintain their attention so that they never take their eye off the prize.
Especially with this generation of students too. And, you know, I can only speak for me, but I will always tell people personally, I always did well with the students. Of course, you have your challenges, but sometimes people who aren't in the field automatically think, oh my goodness, how can y'all work with all those terrible kids? And the kids, to me, that was the fun part. It was always tougher working with the adults. Once you got into leadership, that was harder working with the adults. But really working with the kids, that's where the excitement came alive. And I always wanted to be a teacher that I never really had. from my whole education, and this is no disrespect to any teachers, there are literally less than maybe two or three in my whole educational experience that I can remember were really innovative, captivating teachers that really brought out a spark in me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, that was my experience. And I think it's important to note having a teacher like you, even from things I've seen posted, I always said, dang, I wish I got to observe Sean in the classroom just to have a brain break, meaning just to walk away from a lot of the stress and heavy burdens and just the responsibilities that, I had in other roles. Teachers like you make the field extraordinary and exceptional. But sometimes
Yeah,
being extraordinary can come with a cost. And I'm
yeah,
saying that about you because I know good, solid teaching when I see it. And that can come with a cost. And you, Sean, took a risk on something major that has literally brought national attention. And that is when you had the audacity to say, I want to have this advanced placement course, but just not any course. Tell us about that course that has landed you even in USA Today.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. It's AP African American Studies, which has been,
Mhm.
for many people you may know, all over the news and controversial stories and headlines. And I want to take a little bit back down the timeline prior
Mhm.
to AP. In my current school district, I was sitting around for a few years wondering why we didn't have African American history in general. And
A
I
lot of school systems don't.
they don't. And so
Mhm.
I really, sometimes the phrase you don't know what you don't know prompts action. And for me, after a few years of wondering why there wasn't this course, I just said, I don't know who to talk to, so I'm going straight to the superintendent.
Mm.
Never met the superintendent, had never conversed with him via any kind of communication. I said, I'm just
Hold
going to
on,
speak.
Sean.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. You didn't even talk to your principal first.
I didn't talk to anybody other than the superintendent.
Wow.
I went straight. I said, look, I don't
Oh
even know
my
who to talk
goodness.
to. I like, let me go ahead to the person that makes decisions around here. And
Wow.
no, I sat in my classroom and I drafted an email directly to the superintendent. And I said, hey, I had a question. I was wondering what's the feasibility of having African American history classes in the school district? This is something I've been thinking about. And I didn't think I was going to get a response. And I think it was probably like 9 minutes later I got a response from them, and it was sent from their iPhone. They said, "That's a good question," and they said, "Okay, I'm gonna kind of reach out to some folks, and I'll get back with you." And within probably 2 to 3 weeks, we had a committee in the school district to explore developing an African American history course. So we had begun working on that just for our school district. And so we had a crew from central office. We had teachers, and what I found out there was a couple other like-minded teachers that they roped into the process as well. So we started developing curriculum, and then the state of Virginia came up with a framework for a statewide course. So they kind of beat us to it. I
Mm.
had to change our focus to say, okay, well, since this course is coming down the pipeline, how do we prepare teachers to teach this course? And it was
Mhm.
what we call an academy class entitled African American History and Culture for Educators. So we started, as you mentioned, working with adults, focus on the adult learners about
Mhm.
American culture and some of the themes that they may come across in this class. So it started with that standard course. So I had a 2 year head start before AP African American Studies. Well, really 3 year head start before that course came into realization. So with the AP course, they were piloting it throughout different states.
Okay.
Then this was the second year pilot. So they had reached out to different schools, and my principal was interested in it. And he touched base with me. And I said, hey, I would love to be a part of this. And then we went through the application process, and then we were selected to be a pilot course for this school year.
So, what was it that gained? Because something has highlighted you and your school. It could be God's favor. It could be a lot of things, especially since other schools piloted it. But what is the reason you think that you and your school specifically really gained so much national attention from this?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said myself before, being true to myself. I'm gonna be
Hmm.
honest. I I used to sit and doesn't sound good now in retrospect, but I would tell myself I'll never be a teacher of the year because I'm too much of me.
Mm.
I'll never get accolades because I'm too much of me. Like I have a certain way of doing things that's authentically me. I
Hmm.
thought it was just flying over people's head and was never going to get recognized. So I stuck to my guns with that. So when it comes to the AP course and
Hmm.
other courses, I'll take the framework that they provide us with, the curriculum, the pacing, the
Hmm.
topics, the essential knowledge, but it's got to have some of me in it. I have
Hmm.
to take it, deconstruct it, add the creative flair to it, add the conversation to it, uh,
Hmm.
add things that the curriculum may not cover in a way that will grasp students' attention.
Hmm.
It's a little bit of that. So it kind of turned around to where people started to recognize what was going on in the classroom and seeing what was going on. So
Hmm.
I think it became just it was a bit of curiosity from the school district. They were like, okay, we have this course
Hmm.
and we want to interview or understand what's going on, particularly when media outlets would reach out to the school district. And because I had been one of those individuals that was writing curriculum and assisting 3 years prior, uh,
Hmm.
I had some background knowledge on the history of this content. So and and that's all it was. You said it great. Is a lot of God's favor,
Hmm.
and it's really just being me within the classroom space. So
Hmm.
generally, what's happened, I've had a number over the last 3 years, a lot of media from NBC, from Fox, WTOP, NPR, WUSA, American University, USA Today. I've had a lot of folks
Hmm.
inside the classroom, but what they get is a healthy dose of how my classroom looks every day.
That's right. Yes.
Like,
You are not putting on a show at
yeah,
all.
uh,
Yep. Hmm.
get a dose of reality
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, where I'm not just simply lecturing kids to death, um, which I could because there's enough content to do so, but the creative projects that I think would get kids engaged, the the current events conversations or at the end of
Hmm.
the day, cultural conversations, the things that they develop and create. So they're walking into a space where, um, even if you compare it to other teachers, and there's a lot of wonderful teachers all over the country,
That's right.
and I just think they're going to get something unique. So I think that appeals to people. There's the quote unquote controversial topic of African American history and African American studies. But when media outlets and people from the school district come in that represent media, they see something unique and engaging. And when they walk in the classroom, they're transformed into being students as well. To, like you said, like, remembering two teachers that were impactful. That's one
Hmm.
of the things that many of the people come in, they say, wow, I wish I was in your class. Or where were you when I was in high school?
Hmm.
Because these are the things that, quite frankly, they interest me. So the things that
Yeah.
happen in my classroom interest me first and foremost. And
Hmm.
I'm also like, how do I translate that to young people of a different generation to kind of get them captivated in the moment to enjoy their learning? But then also walk away with some jewels that, like, okay, apply to life outside of history. And I think that's how I get them. It's like, hey, dude, this is real life stuff here.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with it?
Yeah. And I think it begs the question. Suppose a person says, "Oh my goodness, African American studies, slavery was so long ago," or "Why do we still have to talk about that?" or "It's so exclusive," meaning it is excluding other people. It's critical race theory, it's anti this, it separates us. How do you answer and respond the critics? How do
Honest-
you respond to the critics? And Sean, what is the why? Why does it matter to really still teach this?
Yeah, it's simple to me. I think we've made it so complex, but the simple answer is it's the human story.
Mm,
We, for me to devalue or establish a hierarchy of what's important about the human story, it's just irresponsible. Um, I teach history from a lens of empathy. So I tell students, hey, you may not understand these cultures, you may not understand these localities, you may not understand these ethnicities, these socioeconomic variances. However, I want you to imagine if you were in any of these individuals or groups' shoes, how would you feel?
hmm
That's all I want them to think about. Like, how would you feel, irregardless of culture? Now, the critics would have to ignore the human story for it to be problematic. Which means if I'm willing to ignore the human story, that means I have established some form of caste system,
mm,
or I have established some kind of social hierarchy to where one group of the society is more important than the other group. For me to make that a rational argument, because if I say, okay, African American history is not important, and you said the question, what is the why? My question is the same for them. Well, why is it not important?
hmm
Which is the question that's not been answered.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
answers are steeped in, and I'll try to paraphrase, is more of a fear of a couple of things. A fear that idolized heroes are going to be diminished. And if they're diminished, then that reflects something about me, potentially. Then also on the flip side, if another segment of the population, in this case African Americans, if they're uplifted, that is a threat to me somehow, which a person can rationalize in their mind how that's a threat, but they're also going to have to explain that. Now, unfortunately, everybody in society is not expected to explain themselves.
hmm Yeah.
I have to explain myself, why I have to teach about African American culture. No one has to explain themselves of these many generations of American history, uh, why we learned so many people, places, and things that were deemed important for everybody at the expense of other aspects of our beautiful human existence.
hmm
So if I don't think one segment of the population is important, I would rather people just say that. So at least I know exactly what you mean. But it's a lot of coded counter arguments of you all are demonizing the heroes of old, and I don't think
hmm
it's even that. I think it's like any person's character. Once you put a mirror in front of them and everything's exposed and everything's laid bare, you're gonna find good, ugly, indifferent, and people fear that. It's almost like uh, if I if my idol gets torn down, some people believe that's a reflection of them.
hmm
Also, if there's a segment of the population that I believe is a lesser than, if they are empowered, then that also makes me have to reflect on myself. Because what if this population that is minoritized responded in kind and how they have been treated throughout their time here in the United States? And so people are threatened. Um, I've been writing and reading, and there was a thought from a leader at UVA many years ago where he believed that if African Americans achieved an education, that was an act of war because it was a threat to white Americans.
Ooh, wow.
To be educated, an act of war,
Mm, mm,
because it would. And his argument was it would give them political power because they would then understand
mm-hmm,
the politics for the betterment of African Americans, and back to thinking it was a threat. That's the same thing we're dealing with in education now. Is that okay?
mm-hmm.
Um, it's a threat for people to be empowered, just like it's a threat for an enslaved African to learn to read and write. Because if you get knowledge, then you're able to activate and motivate and advocate for so many different
That's
things,
right.
including
Mm-hmm,
freedom and liberation and self-actualization and the human agency that has been stripped of you.
mm-hmm,
So for me, the why I teach it is because it is part of the human story. The same way when I taught U.S. history and world history too, I didn't stray away from the human story. I didn't say I'm not going to talk about these other ethnicities or other nationalities. I had no fear of it
mm-hmm.
because it was part of the story.
And I think it's so critical for people to understand that learning is an active process. And if we could empower one another to think, that is so important. Oftentimes, what I'm finding, especially what's portrayed in media, people spewing off at the mouth without thinking about what they're really saying and about not really having the knowledge on what they're speaking of, but just speaking from emotion and not even being open into thinking about their thinking. And that is what I could even tell from your answer and the complexity of it. Yet it's so simple to me because I get it. Is that the very way that you've explained it ever so clearly is the way that you're teaching your students on how to think? Because maybe you had a student coming in there a bit closed-minded, but yet still willing to take the chance to say, I'm going to learn and see what this is all about and think for myself.
Yeah,
And the feedback has been absolutely positive from the kids because I've been keeping up with all of the articles and things of that nature. But also, I think that this generation, in spite of issues with TikTok and everything else, for the most part, this generation I've seen, they're hungry for truth.
yeah,
They're hungry for people cutting out the BS. They want off true authenticity. They want you to show up as who you are. And I think you as a teacher, you being your authentic self, and we use that often nowadays, but I mean it, your authenticity shines through, and that will get any student to eat right out of your hand. So as you're going through this process of teaching, and I know that we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to get to this because I think it speaks volumes. Here you are navigating this course, navigating grad school, navigating new licensure, a lot of other things, right? Sean, how did you still find the strength within yourself to show up every day to pour into these students when you still had your own personal life, personal things going on, some really tough challenges that maybe people outside of your personal circle may not even know about? Tell us about what caused you every day to put forth your best effort, even when there was a season of your life when so much was happening to you personally and you just didn't even know how you were going to get through day to day.
yeah. That's an excellent question. It requires a lot of stamina. Uh,
Mm,
you mentioned the why. And it's interesting. I literally had this conversation today, and for
Oh.
me, it really stems from childhood, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ability to kind of stick to things now because um, I grew up in some interesting environments. And one thing that struck me very early and often was this can't be all there is to the world.
Mm.
This can't be it. So sometimes I'm surrounded by madness, insanity. I've seen a lot of things. I've had a colorful life, and a lot of people don't know it. Um, but at a young age, I said, look, um, I know my life is going to be bigger and greater than this. So therefore, the decisions I make have to point me wherever that's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so as I've grown throughout the years, I've kind of kept the main thing, and said, look, I grew up struggling. I grew up in what was poverty, but I didn't think about it very much. My mom didn't mention the word poverty until I was like 40.
Mm.
Like I knew, but I was just like, all right, I'm gonna make it. So as an adult, I just try to foster that in a professional environment. I still got goals, I still got dreams, and I want that to be contagious to the young people. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I clock in every day and go so hard because I can't afford not to. Because I know the result of letting off the gas. I know the result of uh potentially losing everything for having an off day. And I have off days. But it's just that um that mentality as a young person, and then having my mom support me so much, and she gave me so much foundation, and I learned so much from her, but then I had to fill in the gaps for the things she couldn't teach me.
Mm.
So I had to figure that out on my own, but she had given me such a firm foundation to work with that I filled in the gaps and started thinking my way through. So as an adult and as a teacher, I come in because I can't have my students feeling like they can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna walk in the classroom. I tell them straight up from the beginning of the day, look, I'm not having a good day today. I just want y'all to know. And then they see me push through
Mm-hmm.
it. So it's like they may have come in the room with some nonsense that happened at home or out in the community, or maybe just their previous class. So me having some transparency and some vulnerability and saying like, look, hey, I don't have it together today. I tell them what my struggles are in school. I've told
Mm-hmm.
them when I failed my first class, my first semester in college. That's the first time I failed a class. I tell them like, you're gonna have failures.
Mm-hmm.
You got to bounce back. So for me, it's like being tenacious and persevering through things. Last year was probably one of the bottom three
Yeah.
years of my life, like hands down. There's so many things that happened that some people know about, and there's even
Mm-hmm.
more than what I even published to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I had to fight through. But at the end of the day, um, if we take life by the reins and say, look, I wanted to be better, I wanted to be greater, there's costs that come with that. There's gonna be days that is not shining outside. There's gonna be days where the storms are more prevalent than the sunlight. And but I gotta be somebody that's like, look, I'm gonna stand 10 toes down. Yeah, I'm gonna struggle some days.
Mm-hmm.
I'll fight it, I'm gonna bounce back. And I want people to see that. So when I accomplish things, and I don't always know how people perceive it. It's like, do people think I'm bragging? More of it's just to show God's glory. It's like, look, all this stuff is happening. Yes, I think I'm talented. Yes, I think I'm smart. However, it's God's grace that sustains me through all of this stuff. And I want
Mm-hmm.
people to really understand, like, hey, no, you can make it. Because literally, I've been called polished before. I found that funny one time when I told it.
Hmm.
one of my childhood stories is something, and I tell some stories where people don't even think it's the same person. I'm like, I'm glad you said what you said at the beginning, but I got some stories.
I'm sure we all do.
I got some crazy stories, but it's always the bounce back. It's like, do I give up and hang it up just because even if I go through a long, difficult stretch, am I building something? Am I building character? Am I building perseverance? Am I building strength? Am I building something to where that reason why I live
Mm-hmm.
is able to come back to the forefront? And I think that's what people got to understand. Like once you know that you're great, once you know that you have something big to accomplish in life, doesn't mean that it's going to be super easy. It
That's
just means
right.
that
Sure won't.
you don't forget it. So
Yeah.
once you don't forget it, you don't let anybody take it from you. And most importantly for me, um, you can't let yourself take it from you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we rob ourselves of who we really are because we get locked up into the negativity. So for me, as an adult now, I'm just like, nah, I gotta get it. And some days I'm gonna be like, dang, I ain't quite get it today.
Yeah.
The next day I'm coming back harder than I did before.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I could keep talking with you. I want to be respectful of your time, but I just have one or two more questions.
Yeah.
And Sean, what are your hopes for just not only this African American Studies course, but also what are your hopes for your future as you continue to build this American dream?
Yeah, for African American studies, my hope for that is that we just stop having the controversial label on it.
Mm,
To me, African American studies, uh, ethnic studies courses, women's studies courses, LGBTQIA plus courses. Those are all a part of the human experience.
yes.
And for me, I would love to see society. I'm a realist here, but I would love to see society get to a point where some of these things aren't taboo to have a discussion. Because as you mentioned, and I believe this wholeheartedly, educators' job is to equip students to be able to think.
Hmm.
And thinking critically doesn't mean you think lesser of something. It just means that you're able to analyze something and then come up with a system of understanding things. And so I just want to get to a space where we can have these varieties of courses to where they're not overly politicized or in a way that we rob students of the opportunity to learn about the human experience. Because what I find is this: if a student doesn't learn it within a teaching and learning environment, they're going to learn about it somehow, some way.
Hmm.
A question would be: is it handled responsibly or is it handled irresponsibly? Is it handled in the context of a classroom or a random chat room where anybody said anything? Is it handled in a schoolhouse? Is it handled on the internet where they can hear things that are far worse than anything that any of us teachers have to offer?
Hmm.
So, and for me, I think my goal ultimately is just to impact education at a higher level, whether it be a school building administrator. I do want to get into the superintendency, like an assistant superintendent
Yes.
of curriculum and instruction,
You
because
better.
one thing I learned is policy controls everything. So at the end of
Hmm.
the day, even though I said not wanting things to be politicized, we got to be real here. School systems are a function of government.
Hmm.
Therefore, policy controls everything. So when you have people that are passionate, that understand young people, also understand this whole, enterprise of education, making decisions that truly impact the system and students in a new progressive way,
Hmm.
I think that's very important. So I think that particularly as a black man, and when I was in corporate America, often in meetings I was the only black man. When I got into education, often in meetings I was the only black
Only
man.
black man.
No difference. There's a demographic.
Isn't
So
that wild? Hey.
hey, so often I'm a 101 or one of three or one of four in meetings. So I think being people say at the table, but not just being at the table, but leaving an impact at the table.
That's right.
Having something to say that's just not regurgitating generations of things that may not have worked. No, bringing new ideas, creativity, cultural sensibilities.
Hmm.
I don't use the word swag no more, but if I was going to time machine, bring some swag to the table.
Yeah.
Bring something to the table that's really going to leave a lasting impact. So that's ultimately my goal. Whatever that looks like, if I'm in the position I'm in now, if I'm in a higher position, quote unquote, the goal is to leave an impact and leave a legacy.
I love that. And I could definitely see you in that superintendency realm. As a matter of fact, two of my black male cousins that come to mind off of the gate have reached up to the top like that. One of my cousins you may have heard of, he has worked at Regent for many years, Dr. Herman Clark, and he did principalship, superintendency, and then I have a cousin in the DC area also who has worked his way up the ranks for the superintendency, and we definitely need more of that. Really, Sean, if a person wanted to just learn more about you, connect with you, what is the best way? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? Do you have a website? Anything like that?
Yeah. My website is www.sean, that's SEAN lmiller.com. So www.seanlmiller.com. Same thing on Instagram, Sean L. Miller. Yeah, you can check me out there. LinkedIn, yeah, find me. I'm out there.
Okay.
Always working on LinkedIn. Definitely talking about happenings in my life and particularly in education, always dropping new information there. So yeah, definitely.
Also, this just dawned on me. Is your book still in publication? Your coloring book, I think,
Yeah, the
right?
Bible, yeah, the Bible in black coloring book. Yeah,
Tell us, how can we get that, please?
yeah. Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com, check
Okay.
books, the Bible in black coloring book. And that is, I drew different biblical concepts and characters with an urban flair. And yeah, A to Z. So you'll get to see some. And I did this in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Interesting story behind how that happened. But yeah, definitely check that book out.
Yes, indeed. Because I got one and I love it. And
Thank
I
you.
will have that in the show notes as well. And Sean, as we come to a close, what would you say to a teacher, perhaps, that may have lost his or her spark, tired, exhausted? By the time this airs, it's going to be end of the school year. Some schools are already on leave, vacation, so to speak, although teachers' work never stops over the summer. It's a myth, y'all, to think that teachers are off over the summers. I'm going to just put it out there like that. People tell me that. And although I'm no longer in public school education, I will always advocate and stand up and say that is a myth. But Sean, say if you're talking to someone who is tired, burnt out, maybe teetering along quitting. Now, when I left on top. So I wasn't disgruntled, but there are a lot of people who are bitter, disgruntled, burnt out. What is a word of encouragement you would give them to just keep on going?
Yeah, no doubt. I think this your teaching space has to be 100% you. And what I mean is this: from the aesthetic to the vibe of your class, it's got to reflect you. And so my classroom is a reflection of me. It looks like how my house would look. It looks like how my man cave would look. Because it's a constant reminder of who you are. And so when you walk in that space, yes, it's for the students, but it's for you too. And sometimes we forget that. We sterilize so many things and we lose ourselves in becoming teachers. And sometimes we forget why we got into it for. Yes, we want to serve young people, and that's what we're going to do until we clock out. But we got to be mentally well ourselves. We have to be in a space that we want to be in. So when I walk in my room and I see comic books all over the place, I see Funko Pops all over the place, I see posters, I see colors all over the place. When I walk in there, it feels like home, feels like a place I even want to be. So I think from an aesthetic standpoint, people just have to create the space they want to be in. And remember that, like, look, some days are going to get tough, but at the end of the day, did you impact even one student?
Mhm.
Gonna be days where class is just like it feels like a wreck today. What
Yeah.
happened? But then did you impart something that could potentially change someone's life forever? And I think that's what it comes down to. We have to kind of dig into our own well to provide students with something that no one else can give them. We all have something to offer. And I think in the classroom and school environment, we have to be willing to kind of pull back the layers of the onion of ourselves and be willing to share that with students because that may be the greatest thing they ever get. And I think for teachers that are struggling, hey, like I said, be yourself and be willing
Mhm.
to put that on Front Street. Not everything, because kids are kids, but enough authenticity and narratives and experiences that you've been through and say, no matter what, if I can impact a single student to where their life changes forever, even if it has nothing to do with my content area,
Mhm.
then I've done my job. And I think one of the, and just as an aside, one of the greatest moments I've had as a teacher, and this was early in my career, probably year 2 or 3, I had a student who had disappeared for a while um, and had gotten pregnant.
Mm.
And then I remember she came back and she said, Mr. Miller, um, if it wasn't for your history class, I would have dropped out of high school.
Wow.
And
Hey.
and I was like, this is what matters. I don't even know if she remembers anything about US history.
Mm.
But the fact she was able to stick it through all because of a history class and because of the vibe, the environment, authenticity, a welcome space, and willing to serve the students, I think that makes it all worth it.
Much respect, much love, many blessings to you,
Likewise.
your beautiful wife, your adorable girls, your
Yeah,
family is everything. Y'all, yes, he loves students, he loves people, but his wife and girls and his mom are
yeah.
everything. And, blessings to all of you. Sean, thank you so much
Thank you.
for gracing our presence today. And I continue to hope and pray nothing but the best and abundance for you and keep changing lives one day at a time.
Thank you. Blessings to you as well. Thank you for having me.
It has been such an honor having Sean, Dr. Sean, up here on the Power Transformation Podcast. And y'all, please support all of his projects and get a copy of his coloring book. It is the absolute best. And read the articles that have been written about what he is doing and show support. Show support is that just know that learning about these things, it's not a bad thing. It helps to make our nation and our world so much vibrant, richer. If only we could put aside our differences to understand each other and to work for the common good. Wow, can you imagine what a world it would be? It's possible, and it begins with people like Dr. Sean Miller and everyday people like you making small changes that can grow into something huge and tremendous, more than what you could ever, ever dream. So join me again for another episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Let others know about it. But we'll close with this affirmation. Say it like you mean it. I am boldly and courageously changing the world for the better, one day at a time. If you enjoyed today's show, then you don't want to miss an episode. So follow the Power Transformation Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you usually listen, and remember to rate and review. I also invite you to connect with me on social media at Alethea Felton. That's at ALETHEAFELTON. Until next time, remember to be good to yourself and to others.